It's our weekly Big Ten segment with Big Ten Country's Kenneth Davis. We have become fast friends. This is just some of the most fun I have all week. And Kenneth, I didn't know how I would feel about Friday night football. Like I really, having done high school for as long as I did, you have it in your head like Thursday is for this, Friday's for this, Saturday's for this, Sunday's for this. I kind of love it that I can go home and watch a Big 12 game on one channel, a Big 10 game on another channel, and this week it's Nebraska and Illinois. My co-hosts, who usually aren't here on Fridays, were not here on Thursday because they had a high school game. They're en route as we record this, just so people know. But they're in Lincoln for the game tonight, and yeah, they're very excited. Smokey is a huge Nebraska guy. Never been to Memorial Stadium. 65 years old, so it's a huge thing. And I was talking to Matt McChesney yesterday, who used to play for Colorado and was at the game, the Colorado-Nebraska game. He said that the atmosphere is back at Memorial Stadium, but this is maybe a bigger test for Nebraska than Colorado was, because Illinois is legit tough on defense and pretty darn efficient on offense. I don't think that they're going to light the world on fire, but Luke Altmaier's not bad. How do you see this one going? This would be maybe one of the most physical games we'll see all year.
You hit it right out the park. And I like the fact that you mentioned Colorado first, because this is the reason why I wouldn't touch Colorado in that game versus Nebraska. You're talking about an Illinois team who last year they had the law firm when you're looking at Randall and Newton, but they still have some good defensive ends, and they're rounding out. Their linebackers are pretty good, but really for some reason right now, and you got to give it up to Brett Bielema, they are a defensive back producing school. Now it's been like that since Lovie Smith, of course, was the head coach there. He had some success, didn't have as much as we want here in the state of Illinois. But this game for me means a lot for both institutions. You look at the fact, and I'm happy you said that about Smokey, and him being as seasoned as he is, going up to Nebraska, where it looks like Nebraska with Matt Rule may have them back. And like that for me, and we talked about that now ad nauseum the times I've come on with you, when Nebraska returning to old Tom Osborne form, not saying that they're there, but what it could perhaps mean for the Big Ten and for the state. I think right now, when you're talking about Dylan Raiola being this swashbuckling young freshman, the question is, will they put everything on him? You look at the fact Nebraska has dialed, they can run. Illinois, and now getting to their offense with Luke Altmaier, who got benched last year, has come back from that benching and it's been pretty good. Pat Bryant is a fabulous receiver. They have two nice receivers, Illinois. I think this could be a problem for Nebraska. I know, odds makers, I think, have them winning by a little bit more than a touchdown. Honestly, I have some bias with this one. On our show, we had Jeremy Warner on, who covers Illinois. He does a terrific job. Jeremy and James both took Nebraska. I took Illinois. I think this could be a nice upset game. I think for both schools, this is a good game, but I think it'd even mean more for Illinois, knowing that nationally a lot of people are watching Nebraska again because of Rule and because of Dylan Raiola, and it could be something to kind of put Illinois on the map, to where we're not asking for them to be world beaters, but we like them to be what perhaps Wisconsin was in the past, or closer to what Minnesota is when they're good. Illinois is hot and cold often, and being, again, it's the state school here. I live in Chicago. That you want to see them perform well, and I think there's a chance. Brett Bielema is really doing a really good job at Illinois. I think this game could go either way. If you asked me at the beginning of the year, I probably would have taken Nebraska, but seeing how Luke Altmaier has grown, I think it's a chance that Illinois can pull this off. The problem with Illinois right now, they're running the ball decent, but they're not gashing for a lot of yards. If they can consistently run against Nebraska, I think and if they can make it a game where Dylan Raiola kind of has to do a little bit more than you want him to do at this stage in his young career, I think Illinois could take it. I know it's an away game, but we'll see. I think to your point earlier, I love that it's a Friday night game. I can't wait to this evening. Sometimes when everything's on Saturday, it's a lot. Just to be honest with you, it's good to just, this one game, get it out the way. So I'm excited. This is what you want to see, with some real old school Big Ten teams, not playing in an old school manner. Still, you got to win in the trenches. But you like to see schools like this get out there and get it done. So I'm amped up to see what happens this evening with the Fighting Illini going on to take on Nebraska at Memorial Stadium, as you mentioned earlier.
You know, even though Luke Altmaier was benched last year, I was at the game. What I think is probably he would like to forget the most. When he was at Ole Miss, he had to play in the Sugar Bowl because Matt Corral got hurt, and Baylor absolutely punished him all night long. And, you know, I remember watching, like, the plays that he was able to make, I was impressed with. Because, you know, you're this young freshman guy that's kind of thrown into action against this defense that was just lethal at the time, that had Jalen Petrie and Terrell Bernard and all these guys, JT Woods. And, I mean, they were just out for blood that night. And I thought, okay, this guy's got potential. And then all of a sudden he's at Illinois and, you know, had to wait his turn there a little bit too. But, yeah, I've been impressed with his to be able to bounce back. It reminds me a little bit of what Max Duggan went through at TCU, where it was up and down and up and down. And then it's like when the light comes on or the confidence thing happens. Taylor Martinez, same thing at Kansas State when he was there after kind of being beat up a bit at Nebraska. The confidence light comes on. You're like, oh, wow, okay, I can do this now. I can be the guy.
Right. And also to piggyback what you're saying, at Ole Miss, he had two different offensive coordinators. This is the first time he's had a coordinator 2 years in a row. But yeah, for anybody that hasn't seen Luke Altmaier, somewhat of a dual threat. I mean, he can get it done with his legs. That's not what he does as far as like just some scrambly, but he can get it done with his legs and has a nice arm. Solid build, somewhat slight, but definitely, you know, an improvement from last year. And there was a lot of questions how he's going to respond from that bench. And he's responded so far. It's been a long time since Illinois has been 3-0. So we definitely have to see what happens. And again, like I say, I'm gonna go with the Fighting Illini. I may have on, you know, orange and blue glasses, but I'm going with the Fighting Illini with this game.
Yeah, absolutely. USC and Michigan. This is USC's first proper, you know, Big Ten kind of big boy game. But again, it's kind of disappointing that we're at this place with Michigan. Where they're in a rebuild, and now they've changed back to Alex Orji, who we all thought was going to be the starter and then wasn't. This does not look sustainable for Sherrone Moore and the Wolverines this year, because the Big Ten's a good conference. They're not going to get many more. Like Arkansas State, you know, put up points on them. This is not the same Michigan team. How can Michigan get out of this funk, and what do they expect from Alex Orji?
I can't tell you. I think they expect the offense to be a lot more capable. But I think usually as of right now, even though Davis Warren's been inconsistent, I think that he's more consistent as far as through the air. You look at Alex Orji being a big physical quarterback who can get it done, running the ball, has a cannon for an arm, but accuracy and proficiency has necessarily been issued. But he hasn't gotten enough chances too. Listen, I think this right here speaks volumes about where Michigan is at. When a game against a USC team at the beginning of the year, I don't know if any of us thought they were going to be this good on both sides of the ball. And you look at the fact that with Lincoln Riley, you probably thought they were going to be good offensively. You look at what Miller Moss did in the bowl game last year as far as 6 TDs. This is the wrong time to make this move for me, because defensively, Deanton Lynn has those boys going. Like I think if it was a situation where this was last year's USC team and defensively they had shortcomings, I could see you going to the bullpen and switching up and going with this style of quarterback, because you're like, all right, we can expand the running game, because now that linebacker, somebody's going to have to focus on that quarterback also, and not just our two nice running backs. But I think with what they can do, and I'm talking about SC on defense, another team with a nice defensive backfield, nice linebackers, defensive line is playing well. I think they're going to get beat. I mean, I forgot what the spread is, but I know I took it as far for SC. I don't know. I hope Alex Orji can perform. I think they're asking a lot going up against a really hot team, one of the better teams we didn't expect to be a better team in the Big Ten now, joining, of course, from the Pac-12 and USC. I think the best thing they got going in this is a home game, but I think SC is going to be able to pull this one off. Like this, I love this game. We had a guest on this week from out on the West Coast, and for me, I don't forget everybody else. For me, USC was the jewel of that package coming from the Pac-12. Yeah. Right, like that was like, oh my goodness, we're getting USC. Like, like really Christmas this early? Like USC, of course, where Washington is at, and modern Oregon, of course, is sweet. And if UCLA ever gets their basketball back to UCLA, we're not talking about the '60s, but it pops it in basketball. As far as it's not John Wooden's era with Lou Alcindor and of course Bill Walton, but you still had those times every decade when UCLA basketball has been good. If they can do that,
just in the Final Four 3 years ago, yeah,
right. If they will be happy with that, football wise, but still USC. I'm just happy that USC is playing this well. I think a lot of people have questions about Lincoln Riley to a degree, with just how bad the defense was last year and the lack of weapons around Caleb Williams. For him to punch back with what he did with bringing D'Anton Lynn from UCLA, and how they have so many weapons on offense that they don't have just one receiver. They got guys, like it's not, okay, we just have to cover X because Miller Moss is going to move that ball all around the field. I think getting all the way back to initially kind of what you're asking, I think it's a wait and see year for Michigan. I think Michigan's going to be okay, but they lost everything last year. Yeah. Like you didn't just lose your head coach, you lost coordinators, you lost your quarterback, you lost your receiver, like your best receiver, your best running back, offensive lineman. Like like most schools can't rebound, and Michigan had gotten to a level to where they were like in the 90s, but we still have to remember academically it's not an easy school to enter. It's different. So where Jim Harbaugh returned them to, fantastic, but it's hard. It's not Ohio State. Like it's not. So it's going to take Sherrone Moore. I know Sherrone Moore said that they didn't want to go out and get into the portal and get a QB. I think perhaps they should have went out into the portal and gotten a QB for this season. That can be up and down. Sometimes it can bite you in the butt, but looking at what they have right now in the quarterback room, and I'm not trying to take a shot at either one of those young men, I know they got some younger players in there. I think if you wanted to have a sustainable season this season, you may need to bring in somebody who had gotten a lot more reps in the past.
Yeah. It feels like they might have been able to at least have an offense that could do a couple of things. And
right.
Yeah. Lincoln Riley was like teetering on the edge if he didn't kind of move off his, the defense doesn't matter kind of stance of where it's Jimbo Fisher or now Billy Napier territory where you're like, well, this is the way I know this will work. And you're like, well, it's not working currently. Like, tell me, Professor, when the formula, will come together, right?
Right. Yes.
Like, I want to believe you, but you keep telling me like, oh no, we're this close, we're this close, we're this close. Eventually, the funding gets cut.
Yep.
And but for him to do that, I think was a huge step. That's a Saban move, right? Where hey, that's a Saban move.
Don't you do me like that, Paul. Don't you bring his name up in this situation.
But it's where, all right, this is going this way. I always like to say Nick Saban would push back against things that he wasn't nuts about, but he wasn't saying that he wasn't going to do it. He was telling everybody, if you all do this, I will do it too.
Exactly. That's it right there. You want to spread everything out? All right. I'll spread everything out. You want a mobile quarterback? Guess what? I'm going to go get me a mobile your whole thing. As you said, Nick Saban adapted. Okay, I need to bring in a new offensive mind. You can see it from Kiffin, Sarkisian, so on and so forth. And that's exactly what Lincoln Riley had to do. And I think we forget, like, not us, but some people that aren't paying it, that's USC. Like LA, that region doesn't play about that school. And he came in hot. Being that coach that everyone wanted, and that first year it was gangbusters. But how the second year went, and like you said, if you don't move off of this and improve this defense, you're not going to be long for this institution because there are other people that you can get to come to SC. So I'm happy he did it, again, because it benefits me. I like seeing a true blue blood in SC look like they can be, but I'm not going to say they're there. Yeah, like we got whole teams to programs to standards. I'm not saying they're there, but they definitely look like they can be there again to where Pete Carroll had them 15 years ago or so.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, this is the path of something's not working, don't keep doing it. You know,
right? Common sense.
Yeah, I will say this about Dave Aranda here at Baylor. I know like firing coordinators gets like sometimes looks desperate, but he's not going to keep doing something that's not working. I mean, he's not. So now it's hard. Like Nick Saban or Lincoln Riley can change something and it's like really fast. People like, oh, look, something different at this big boy. Dave Aranda changes something and people are like, oh, well, that's interesting, you know, because it's Baylor, so that they don't have the same kind of cachet. But exactly. Yeah, I think adaptability now in college football is the number one thing for coaches. Like that's the number one thing you have to do, and they've shown it. I think Sherrone Moore will show it. It's just right now, like, what can you adapt to? Like, you know, you can't just in the middle of the season, like, oh no, we're gonna do this.
You can't keep teams honest as far as you can pass the ball a decent enough to where they don't have to lock in on your run game. Like they can't do that. If they at least had a decent passer, can work in some play action. Everyone, look, they were a run team last year. They had a guy that was uber efficient on third downs in JJ McCarthy, but we've talked about they took the ball out of JJ McCarthy's hand a few times down the stretch last year when games got tough, but they still had a guy at that time that you can lean on. And it's not a knock. They just don't have it right now to have a guy that can keep defenses honest, and the offense has been somewhat stagnant.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other games I wanted to talk about, and not because this is maybe going to affect the race at all in the Big Ten, but it is a rivalry game. It's Florida Rosedale. It's, you know, Iowa and Minnesota. This is maybe one of the last times I think in the coming years we're going to see the two style of teams in the Big Ten go at it like this, because I do foresee changes come. Like we just talked about USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA. None of them are going to like buy into this is like, we're going to play old school football in the snow. You know, even Nebraska, you know, you look at their offense right now, like they're built for cold weather, but also they're an all weather team. I think that all these other teams are all like Ohio State's an all-weather team. Michigan last year was an all-weather team. Iowa and Minnesota, I know that you build so long for a certain thing. They're not all-weather teams right now. But this might be one of the last times. Like it's in a couple years, I foresee a coaching cycle change with them, or at least philosophy changes if PJ Fleck is there, where it reflects the rest of the league so they can be competitive.
I think that's a great point. Sometimes you like games like this, but I mean, we've kind of talked about Iowa. You kind of get sick and tired of their offense not being able to really do anything through the air. Caleb Johnson is running his butt off, leading the country in rushing yards. It's interesting. I love the Golden Gophers. I would sometimes summer there. I had an aunt in Minnesota growing up. So it was one of those schools that I paid attention to. The last couple of years hasn't been the best for PJ Fleck, but you look at the fact when they faced Amarion Hampton with North Carolina, how he ran on them. And I expect Caleb Johnson to be able to do the same thing. I know a lot of people are thinking about how Iowa looked versus Troy. I think defenses can have games where they can just have off games. You don't have to call them into question. One thing you know about both of these teams, defensively, defense is their calling card. And Iowa, clearly, it's been like that. And it's been like that under PJ Fleck at Minnesota. So, yes, it's a throwback game. Look, they have perhaps the better quarterback with Max Brosmer. Because, you know, Cade hasn't gotten it done. So you could look at the fact that perhaps Brosner and Darius Taylor, they could beat Iowa, if I'm being honest with you, on our show, because I said this is going to be one of the last times I took Iowa. I think it's going to be a game in the teens. I think Iowa's going to be able to slow Minnesota down enough. But it's probably also because I want to see Iowa actually do something. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Gophers beat them. But I'm gonna go with Iowa as you kind of saying this old school black and blue style
Yeah.
of football, basically, where it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Even though, again, with Max Brosmer, Minnesota can get it done in the air better than what Iowa has been able to do the last couple of seasons easily.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to talk about a couple teams in the kind of the macro sense. You mentioned UCLA in football earlier, and you had that's kind of how it is. I think people are kind of surprised when you think. I think because they play in the Rose Bowl, everybody knows where UCLA is. Mm-hmm. If you think about their history, you would think it's got this glorious football history, but it doesn't at all. Like it's not that in any way, shape, or form. Where do you see Deshaun Foster and this group fitting in the new Big Ten and kind of forging a path ahead? Because part of it also is support from the alumni that football's never really gotten. Basketball never has a problem, but Olympic sports never had a problem. Like they're one of the more well-funded Olympic sports. But football, that seems like they kind of want to go about 80% of the way to the goal line, and then they don't do that. And knowing that is a huge deal now with NIL and all of that, do you see them anytime soon being really competitive in this league?
No. But put it like this: like if you give that program maybe 4 years, and I know you can change things quicker with the transfer portal and NIL, and also I'll say this: now from coast to coast, there are kids that are going to see that school on Saturdays, to where it may not be the first institution I want to go to, but it is in Los Angeles. So you know what? I can go live out in LA and really enjoy myself in with this wonderful weather. If you're some kid from Wisconsin, you know what I'm saying, and it's like, hey, we need you to come play on the line. I'm not trying to say that Wisconsin doesn't have skilled players, but just hypothetically speaking. But me personally, I think let me say this. I think, and you hit on it, it's going to take the alums to kind of get triggered off of, we're in the Big Ten, we got something to show. Now, it didn't seem like they cared about that in the Pac-12, so I don't know if they would do that in the Big Ten. But I think coming into a new conference and getting bludgeoned, and then the schools from the Pac-12 that came with you are probably going to be good, because I think Washington is one of those schools that can take a head coaching change. They kind of know what they're doing up there. You look at Oregon is Dan Lannon knows what he's doing, and Phil Knight. So no, I don't need to say anymore, right? And SC, you don't want to be the ugly stepchild, right? Like, so that's one of the only things that I think could trigger the fan base and the alumni to really get behind them and start spending enough. But I don't know, because to your point, they didn't do it in the Pac-12. But yeah, if it was my school, I would want that. You know what I'm saying? But they haven't done it in the past, so I'd be lying to you to say it's coming around the corner. I have to see it first. It would take a couple of years, Paul, for me to be like, it's a chance. And then it will be, okay, is this just an outlier, or is this one of those hot and cold years like I was talking about with U of I earlier with the Fighting Illini, where they in the past have been hot and cold, and we hope they're more sustainable like Minnesota was not before last year. We're looking for something like that. I would have to see USC go 4 years, where at first, let's just say they win 7 games, and then, they start getting to where, 9 games, like consistently in 3 years before I'm like, you know what, they may have something going at UCLA.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the like most hateful or angry emails I ever got doing the show was talking about UCLA during realignment. I'm like, well, they're like, it's nice to have all of LA, but this is about USC and the city they're in, the UCLA, and a UCLA fan was like, hey, we won the conference in 1994. And I was like, bro, I hadn't even seen a Playboy in 1994. What are you talking about? Okay.
Oh, that's back in the day. That's back. Yeah, that if you have to go back to the 90s. I mean, listen, we're seasoned gentlemen. Yeah. If you got to go back to the aughts, and for anybody who doesn't know what I mean the 2000 to 9. All right. If you have to go before then, it's too long. All right. Like, let's just be honest. Like the night, dude, I was a child. So like, you can't go back and tell someone, to whoever sent you that email, we won it 30 years ago.
Yeah, no. I was like, look, man, I'm a Cowboys fan. Troy Aikman's my favorite football player, but like that was in my youth. Like there was,
Don't get me started. Listen, don't you get me started on that. Don't you?
I didn't even know that you could have. I knew that there were like mobile phones. I didn't think that they'd get to this point. Like we had Zach Morris phones. What are you talking about?
We had pagers.
Pagers, right? Yes.
We had so if anybody doesn't know a pager, someone would beep you. They would put their number in to call them back. Every place used to have payphones back in those days, but they took them away. That's just how us young kids at the time kept in contact with our friends or parents or whatever. That was, or it had voicemail, but you had to call to check the voicemail. Then you just didn't, because that's how old 94 is. Great time. I'm sure a lot of you guys would enjoy it because the world is batch crazy nowadays. So it was a simpler time to say the least. But yeah, if you have to go back to where Jimmy Johnson was unceremoniously kicked off the Cowboys, then you're going back pretty far. Because I was never like, why? I was like, that's a bit much calling yourself America's team. But I love Jimmy. I love the triplets. I even loved Jerry back then because the way he would spin. But to see what Jimmy Johnson built with the Cowboys, they could have won 4 straight Super Bowls. And that's with free agency coming in and ripping off. They had depth that people don't even talk about. But free agency started in like 92, 93, and people start cherry picking all the depth that Jimmy Johnson built on the Cowboys staff, and they still were winning Super Bowls. So don't get me amped talking about 90s football and the Cowboys at all.
Yeah, this is why we get along. I do want to ask you one completely non-related football question. I see your Jackie Robinson picture behind you. I'm a huge baseball guy. I want to I'm going to ask every guest this today. We are living at a time where we are seeing our Babe Ruth right now in Shohei Ohtani.
Yes.
And I am here for it. Like, you never know when you're going to, we are lucky enough to live through Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods.
Yes.
We kind of got robbed of our boxer in our era. Like, it might have been Mike Tyson, but then his personal life overtook it, right? We missed the Ali, Frazier, Foreman era, right? All of that. We missed that. Baseball-wise, we've had some great ones. I mean, some really great players, but nothing like this. This is unbelievable.
It's the craziest thing ever. And you hit it when you're talking about Babe Ruth, who was a pitcher prior to them being like, no, you hit the ball too well. You're just going to be an everyday player. You don't need to get on the mound anymore. I remember debating my former co-host about Shohei, and I was like, either or, if he decides at one point to stick to one side, he's still going to be great at it. And the fact that, dog, he's hurt right now. All right. We're not talking, people don't even he's injured and he went 50 for 50. Dog, when we were kids, let's go back to the 90s. All right. If you went 30 for 30, I know 40 for 40 was the number, but if you went 30 for 30, that was like, whoa, watch him. That's a really nice player. 40 for 40 was elite. In a league where they don't even steal like they did when we're going to talk about Ricky Henderson numbers as far as stealing bases. This huge man at that, all right, guys, he's not some small, speedy guy. This huge man has sat there and stolen him hitting 50 home runs. I hate to say it, for him, you expect it because he's that great. You can see him. I can see him doing 60. If you told me that Shohei Ohtani could break Roger, whatever you want to say. We can say Roger Maris's record. We can say Barry Bonds, whatever. I could believe he could do it. So that's not a question. That goes to show how crazy he is. But for him to steal 50 bags and to be that big and not able to pitch because he blew out his arm, I mean, it's crazy. It's the craziest thing. And because baseball is as big as it was, it's getting some attention. But if baseball was as big as baseball was, it would blow our mind. If he had a 10-year stretch of health, it would be the question about is he the greatest player ever would easily be on all of our mouths, all our tongues, as far as just spewing it, because this is ridiculous. Like I love it. Like he's one of my favorite athletes in sports. It's crazy to come from another country. All right, like we don't. I'm sure he speaks better English now, and he kind of knows, but still, this is not his home. Like, it's crazy. Shout out to Shohei Ohtani for giving us something. I like how you put it. that is it's not even once in a lifetime. All right. Like, because there are generations that don't get to see greatness like this.
It's once in a century.
Yes, exactly.
We had Babe Ruth, and then we waited a century, and we'll get another one. And then when there's a 3, when there's a 1 behind the 2, then they'll get another one. That's what we're talking about. Like there's nothing like it. Well, Kenneth, always love talking to you. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you again next week. That's Kenneth Davis, Big Ten Country. He did not want to talk about the Bears today. He said, don't get me started on professional football. You see how emotional he is when he's happy. I don't even want to talk about Bears and Texans. That was not the greatest night for the Bears. Kenneth, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks a lot.
Later, Paul.
365 Sports, more coming at you.